Hello, welcome to the 10.4 selected problems video. This is going to be with, you guessed it, selected problems from textbook page 777 and 779. So we're going to be working with surface area of triangular prisms, and let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so now you should be looking at textbook page 777. I'm only going to do one problem from this page. First, because my voice is almost gone, and second, because we did this in class today. So the problem that I've chosen to do here is on number 5. So it says that a tent is in the shape of a triangular prism. About how much canvas, including the floor, is used to make the tent. So just like I did in the lesson video, I started with the triangle right away. So you can see that I boxed the triangle, or that I outlined rather the triangle in red, and then I wrote the word triangle. I also drew a triangle that looks similar to the one that you see in the picture. Then you want to label the dimensions. Now, if you look at the bottom of your triangle, you see that one half of the bottom of the triangle is 1 yard, and the other side is also 1 yard. So 1 yard plus 1 yard gives you the 2 yards that you see down here at the bottom of my yellow triangle. You can also see that because the other two sides are also 2, that this is an equilateral triangle. Remember, that makes it special because then that means that all of your rectangular sides are going to have the same area as well. So you have 2 triangular faces, and then you have 3 rectangular faces that are all the same area. So these problems are pretty quick and straight to the point. So I've outlined this here, and I've added the height. Don't forget your height of 1.7 yards. You can see that red or pink dotted line there in the middle. And then I'm going to go ahead and do area equals base times height divided by 2. And then I went ahead and did the area equals base times height, which is 2 times 1.7 divided by 2. And then you go ahead and cross simplify the 2's, and you are left with area equals 1.7. Now you'll notice at the bottom that I have numbers 1 and 2 circled there. That's because I'm starting to count the faces on my prism. So the triangles both account for face 1 and face 2. And they're the same. Remember, they're congruent. So that's why I write 1 and 2 there. Next, I'm going to start with the rectangles. Now remember, because this is an equilateral triangle, the rectangles are also going to be the same surface area as one another. So really, you just need to find the area of one of the rectangular faces, and then that'll be your surface area 3 times. So as you can see, I went ahead and drew a rectangle, and then I also outlined the rectangle that I'm going to be working with on the figure in orange. Then I'm going to label each side. So you can see where I get 3, and then I also get the 2 yards that's there from the right-hand side of my triangle. Then I plug that into my formula, area equals length times width, and I'm going to go ahead and get area equals 3 times 2, which is 6. Now notice I've also put the numbers 3, 4, and 5 here and circled them at the bottom. That was after I put a box around my 6. That's so that I remember that 6 is going to count for face number 3, face number 4, and face number 5. So now the last step that I have to do here is add up all of the separate surface areas to get the total surface area. Add up all of the separate areas to get the total surface area. So now I'm going to add the 1.7 2 times, plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, and you'll see that I get a total surface area of 21.4 yards squared. So you want to make sure that you have all of the work that you see here, and that you also have the correct answer boxed in as well. You should have annotated the picture like I have as well, using colored pencils or pens. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and move on after we've written the answer here. So now you're going to be looking at textbook page 779. On 779, I went ahead and selected problem number 15. On problem number 15, I'm going to start with the triangular face, just like I have on all the others. And you can go ahead and see, now that I've outlined the triangle in red, that this too is an equilateral triangle. You can see that because the bottom base is 3, the left side of the triangle is 3, and the right side of the triangle is 3. So that's another one of those special triangles or triangular prisms where you really only have to find the area of 2 separate faces, one of the rectangles and one of the triangles. So you want to go ahead and plug in the dimensions that you see here. Now make sure you don't accidentally plug in the wrong dimension for the height. You can see that I have circled it in red. The height is 2.6. So now we get area equals 3 times 2.6 divided by 2. Because none of my numbers up here, I guess you could have cross-simplified 2 and 2.6, but I went ahead and just multiplied them out. 2.6 times 3, and I got 7.8. From there, I went ahead and put divided by 2, and then I'm going to show the division. So now you can see once I've gotten that all divided out, I have area equals 3.9. So remember, that area of 3.9 is going to be equal to one of my triangular faces. So now I'm going to have two of those, though. See, notice I've written 1 and 2, and I've circled it. I expect for you to be doing the same thing when you're working through these problems. Next, I wrote that this is an equilateral triangular prism, and the reason I did that was so that you know that you're only going to be finding the area for one rectangle. So now, as you can see, I went ahead and outlined the rectangle in green, and you have the dimensions, which are 3 and 7 inches. So then I'm going to plug that into my formula, which is area equals length times width, and then I get area equals 7 times 3, which is 21. And again, just like before, I went ahead and circled the number 3, the number 4, and the number 5 to show that this accounts for my last 3 faces. And again, that's because this is an equilateral triangular prism. So now I'm going to find the total surface area. I went ahead and erased the work. Now I've added the two 3.9s. Notice I put a little white check mark at the bottom. So now I'm also adding the 3 21s. I also would like to point out that because the 21 is a whole number and 3.9 has a decimal, you need to make sure that you're lining up the decimals properly. Notice that I've added a decimal and a 0 for all of the ones that are in red so that my decimal places line up correctly. Now you'll see that your final answer here is going to be 70.8 inches squared, and that's for the whole surface area. You want to be sure to write that answer and box it in. Now we're going to go ahead and look at problem number 18. On problem number 18, right away that you can see that this one is different. The reason this one is different is because this is not an equilateral triangle. So the triangular faces will still have the same area. So I don't want you to misunderstand. When you have a not equilateral triangle, the faces are still the same. So you still only need to find, the bases rather, are still the same. So you still only need to find the area of the triangle once, and that will count as 2 of your bases. So now I've counted the triangle, and I have the dimensions, which are 8.5, 8.2, and 11.6. You want to make sure that you're able to locate where I got those figures, because if you look at my red triangle that's at the top of this triangular prism, you can see that only one of my sides was actually labeled. That was the one on the far right, the 8.2 meters. So now I had to look down below to see the 8.5 on the left-hand side, and I also had to look down below to see the 11.6 for the base of my triangle. So you want to make sure that you know where those came from. You also want to make sure that you, off to the side, write that your base is going to be 6, and that's the base of your triangle. So now we're going to go ahead and plug these numbers into area equals base times height divided by 2. So now I went ahead and multiplied 11.6 times 6 divided by 2. I'm going to cross simplify out the 2 and the 6 to make 1 and 3, and then you can see my math here off to the right. I should also be able to see your math on your paper, so please don't do it on a separate sheet of paper that you leave at home. You can do it on a separate sheet, just make sure that you staple it into the page that you're working on. So now you can see that we found the area, which is 34.8, and I don't need to worry about the meters squared or anything like that right now because we know we're not finished. But again, notice that I circled 1 and 2 at the bottom of that area so that it's easy for me when I get finished with this long problem to come back and find which numbers I need to add together for the surface area. So now I've also made a note to myself that this is not equilateral. So that means that every single one of the rectangular faces may very well be different. You could have 2 that are the same and 1 that's different, or you could have all 3 that are different. So now I've outlined the outside, the face closest to me, if this were sitting on its base, and you can see that I found the dimensions and I've underlined them. They're 11.6 and 12. So I went ahead and plugged that into the formula for area equals length times width, and I get a final answer of area equals 139.2. This is for face 3. Notice before we were doing face 3, 4, and 5. This is just face 3. Now we're going to be looking at the pink rectangle. I'm also going to write the word rectangle here for you. Then you want to go ahead and label the dimensions. Notice the 8.5 has a line pointing to the bottom. You also want to notice that 12 is the line length on the bottom. But remember, it's not actually on the dimension right there for our top rectangle, but we have to look down below to see it. So now we're just going to go ahead and multiply 12 times 8.5. And when we do that, we get a total of 102.0, which is the same as actually 102. Notice I have also circled the number 4 below it to show that this represents the fourth face of my triangular prism. Now you just want to remember, make sure that you think about this, that you have 5 faces in the triangular prisms. So now I took a screenshot and put it up in the top left corner for you. That way we don't lose all the work that we just did and I don't have to switch back and forth. For my last prism, or for my last rectangle rather, I went ahead and outlined it. It's actually outlined in red. So I went ahead and outlined it and I labeled the dimensions 8.2 and 12. Hopefully you can see where I got those numbers here. Then I'm going to start with my formula for area of a rectangle, which is length times width. Then I'm going to plug in the 8.2 times 12. And off to the side, I need to do that math. When I do the math, I come out with 98.4, and that's my 5th face. Now keep in mind, you're not finished here. You've done a lot of work so far, but now you need to add up the individual areas for each face to find the total surface area. So now we're going to add up the 34.8. We're going to add that up twice. Notice I put a box around it. We're also going to add up, that was for face 1 and 2. Now we're going to add up 139.2. That was the face 3 that I've also pointed a line to in green. Then we also have face 4, which was 102. And finally, the last one that we did, which was 98.4. So now we're going to go ahead and check first. You can see that I have 5 dots next to my numbers. That's so that I can make sure that I have all 5 of my faces counted here. And I do. I've also made sure to line up my decimal properly. Notice that red decimal and the red 0 I had to add in order to make sure that all the numbers were lined up properly. So now I've found that the total surface area for this shape is going to be 409.2 meters squared. You want to check your answer to make sure you got the same thing. So now we're going to go ahead and go on to our next problem here. On this problem, these problems weren't actually discussed in the lesson video, so I want to be sure that I cover this thoroughly. With this type of problem, you have to use your imagination a little bit. You're going to need to think to yourself, how can I extend this triangle to make a triangular prism? It can definitely be done. You've been given the height of the prism, which is 12 centimeters. Remember, the triangle that you're looking at is actually a base. So the 12 centimeters would be how far back you draw this triangle. So now let's go ahead and take a look. As you can see, I went ahead and drew the triangle backwards with a green line. Then I drew an orange line about 3/4 of the way back so that I can continue to make my triangular prism. I went ahead and finished it off by making a little triangular base in the back there as well. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do need to go ahead and try and extend this so that you can then work the rest of the problem out, because it says to use the triangular base shown and to show your work on a separate piece of paper to find the surface area. So now I want you to see that I first put the 10 that actually came from right here. See, I've underlined it in pink. That's where that 10 came from right there. Now the 12 that I've bracketed in red came from the height of the prism that we just talked about. So from there, now I've labeled all of the other sides. I've labeled each one of those sides from the triangle here. So if you look, I'll go ahead and underline in yellow. See the 10 centimeters there. We've got 10 centimeters there. That's where I got that one from. Then we've got, I will underline in red, the 9 centimeters there. That's where I got that 9 from. So now, once you've done that, you can label the ones on the back. So notice the one in the back here that's yellow will now go with this one up here that's yellow. Then you have that green 10 in the back that goes with the pink one in the front. And then you have the green 9 in the back, which goes with the white 9 in the front. So notice I just built our triangular prism from the face that they gave us as well as the height of the prism. So from there, you want to go ahead and break it down and start again with your triangle first. Remember, you're going to be looking to solve for 5 faces. So you're going to be looking for all 5, and the triangles will still be congruent. So now we've got triangles of with sides 10, 10, and 9. So we know it's not an equilateral triangle. And we have a height of 8.9. So now we're going to put our formula in. Area equals base times height divided by 2. And we're going to do 9 times 8.9 divided by 2. And you can see my work here. So you can see that I found that the area is going to be 40.05. And notice again, I put the 1 and the 2 with a circle around it. Now I've started with my rectangle. I went ahead and drew a green rectangle around the one that I had in red. So now you can see that I have rectangle is 10 and 12. I got the 10 and the 12 from the 10 that's underlined in yellow and from the 12 that's in red. So now I'm going to find the area of 3 and 4, which is 120. You can tell that both the red one and the green one on the left are the same dimensions because both the left and the right side of the triangle have a side length of 10. So since they both have side lengths of 10, and since the height of the prism all around is going to be 12, you know that it's going to be 10 by 12 on both sides. The only rectangle that will be different is that bottom one because the bottom piece of the triangle has a dimension length of 9. So now we know that we need our final triangle, or our final rectangle rather, on the bottom, and I've outlined that in white. You can see how that one is 9 and 12, so I went ahead and plugged that into the formula, and I get that my final area is going to be 108. So that's my area for that rectangle. Now I've taken a screenshot in the top left corner to show you all of the work that we did for that problem. Now I'm going to start adding up all of the areas for the surface area. Keep in mind, I wrote a white arrow to show you where I got the 40.05. And remember, since that was the area of the triangle, that's the area of the two bases. So that's why it's there twice. Now I'm going to list the 120 that is there twice. This is a step that would be very easy for you to make a mistake on if you're not lining up your decimals properly. So please make sure that you do that when you're adding your numbers together. And again, we have 2 of those because remember we had the 2 side lengths of 10 on both the right and the left side of the triangle. That's why you have 2 rectangles that were the same area. And then our final rectangle is going to be, it's going to have an area of 108. So now when I add all of those up, I'm going to go ahead and make sure my decimal places are all still lined up correctly. So I'm going to add that dot and 00 in red, and then I'm going to begin to add. So my final answer is going to be 428.1 centimeters squared. Notice I dropped the 0 at the end. That's really a non-zero. You don't really need that. So you want to make sure that you do drop that. Now what I would like you to do is go ahead and try number 20 on your own. Be sure that you are doing both textbook page 777 and 779 because I'm going to collect them both tomorrow. Thanks for bearing with me through my very, very bad sickness and voice, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Have a great evening.